Hello and welcome to Real Cheating Story. For as long as I can remember, I've been fascinated by cars. Not just any car, mind you, but the 60s muscle cars. Being a boy in that era, it was easy to recognize each and every make and model. Hot Rod magazine was my Bible, and drag racing was my ambition. My dreams were filled with thoughts of when I would be old enough to buy the car of my dreams. My dream car changed almost every time the new models went on the showroom floor: Camaro, GTO, and Chevy Super Sports 442s. As I got older, the gas crunch put an end to the muscle car era. Detroit had stopped producing the high-horsepower monsters and concentrated on more economical autos. It was sad to see, but I took it like a man and cried my eyes out. In high school, I found a replacement for my fantasies: girls. The sleek lines that made my tongue hang out were no longer made of steel. They were living, breathing people. Some were adventurous and others more laid back, but each had their own appeal. While I was in college, I met someone special, a stunning Italian with a fiery personality and captivating presence. I had been intrigued by someone like her for years, but, as with all new relationships, I overlooked the little challenges. There were some ups and downs, and she needed extra care at times, but when everything was going well, our connection was incredible. Justine and I got married a year after we graduated. It was a big Italian family wedding, with some crazy Irish relatives thrown in to keep things interesting. That probably explains the red-headed Italian, I guess. As for me, I'm a typical California boy named Scott. It's been a pretty average life for Justine and me. We worked hard to pay off the house and put our son through school. Justine manages an insurance agency, and I work for a large bank in corporate America. Our house is almost paid off, and our son, Joe, is out of college and on his own now. Life's pressures should be easing up, but something seems to be going wrong in our marriage lately. We seem to be at odds with each other a lot these days. Justine has always been passionate and sometimes quick-tempered, but lately, it feels like she's picking fights on purpose. It's like she's saying things just to provoke me, which isn't like her at all. And it's not just the arguments, there's been a change in our intimacy too. We used to enjoy spending time together, even just holding hands while watching a movie. Now, it feels like she's avoiding me, like she doesn't want to be near me. I can't even remember the last time we really connected. We still have moments together, but there's a distance that wasn't there before. Justine has been having trouble sleeping at night, though on weekends, she'll sometimes sleep until late in the afternoon. Her eating habits have changed too. She barely touches her food. I've asked her to see a doctor, but she insists she's fine. When I told her I was worried, she just told me to leave it alone. Being the optimistic type, I kept telling myself things would work out if I didn't push too hard. I didn't want to give her any reason to get upset again. I decided to ride out the storm, hoping it would pass. Justine has been the best thing that ever happened to me. She's my world. As we approached our 25th anniversary, I wanted to do something special for both of us. With more time and money now that our son was grown, I planned to rebuild a car and take a couple of weeks to tour the country together. It would be a chance for us to reconnect. Working on the car would also give me something to focus on, away from the tension at home. I found a nice Camaro for sale by an old friend, Bobby, who had been a motorhead since high school and was a fantastic mechanic. He offered to help me with anything I couldn't handle myself. When I brought the car home, I thought Justine would be excited, but she hated it from the moment it arrived. I had hoped to surprise her with the car for our anniversary, but I couldn't tell her that just yet. She saw it as a waste of time and money, constantly criticizing me for working on it. "If you wanted a car, why didn't you just buy one?" she asked. "Justine, this isn't just about a car. It's something I've wanted since I was a kid." "Oh, so now you want to be a kid again? Is this some kind of midlife crisis or something?" "No, but why do you begrudge me this?" "It's something I want to do." "Well, you spend all of your time out here these days, and this has to be costing a fortune." "You mean like those $200 shoes that you've never even taken out of the box?" How about the $800 dress you've never worn? That's different, and you know it. Why is that different? Did you come out here just to start an argument? If you did, you're in the wrong place. Building this car makes me happy, and God knows there's been precious little happiness around this house for the last few months. So just what the hell do you mean by that? You know exactly what I mean. I can't seem to do anything these days that pleases you. If anybody should be confused, it's me. I want to know where the woman I married went and who this person living in our house is now. Am I really that bad? To be honest, yes. I barely know who you are anymore. You're always upset for no reason, and it's like you've started treating me with disdain. Her face softened, and she sighed. Scotty, I'm sorry. I don't mean to treat you like that. It's just... I don't know why I'm doing it, she said, her voice trembling. Baby, I'm not saying these things to hurt you. I love you with all my heart. Do you think maybe we should see someone? Get some help? The look in her eyes told me I had probably gone too far. Scott, I'm not crazy. I'll be fine, she said softly, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek before walking back into the house. I knew then that things were far from over. She wouldn't just give up and let me win an argument that easily. Her heritage wouldn't allow it. After all these years, I knew when something wasn't truly resolved. Later that evening at dinner, the woman I married reappeared. It was wonderful to have her back, even if only for a few minutes. She sat with me, and we had a real conversation, reminiscing about some of the great times we'd shared. After dinner, we curled up together on the couch, and she leaned in close, softly kissing my neck and then gently brushing her lips up to my chin. Her hands found their way to the back of my head, and she kissed me tenderly. There was a surprising intensity in her kiss, and I responded, feeling a connection as my hands rested on her back. She pulled me closer, wrapping her arms around my neck. There was something both familiar and exciting in the way she leaned into me, and I could sense how much she was enjoying the moment. I gently kissed her neck, and the way she responded made me feel like we were reconnecting in a way we hadn't in a long time. The evening was full of tenderness and warmth, bringing back a glimpse of the closeness we once shared. As we sat together, I was reminded of the love that had drawn us together all those years ago. For the first time in what felt like ages, she fell asleep in my arms. It was a moment of peace, though I knew there would still be challenges ahead. After months of hard work, the Camaro was finally coming together. The engine was nearly done, and the car looked stunning. I was planning to give it to her in time for our 25th anniversary. I spent the weekend working on the last few details, wiring, hoses, and belts. By midweek, the Camaro was purring like a kitten. I was proud, hoping she would appreciate the love and effort I had poured into it, and maybe, just maybe, our relationship could be restored, just like the car. Friday came, and I was excited about our anniversary the next day. But when I got home, there was a message from Ju saying she'd be late. The evening was still early, so I decided to take the Camaro out for a test drive. The car handled perfectly, responsive and smooth. I got on the freeway, only to hit a stretch of stalled traffic. The oil pressure was good, the temperature gauge at 160 degrees, and everything seemed better than I could have imagined. While waiting in traffic, I glanced over at the car next to me. To my shock, the driver had a woman's head in his lap. I had to laugh at the absurdity of it all. People do the strangest things on the road. What would it even be like to have a moment of intimacy like that, in broad daylight? It had been so long since anything like that had happened between Ju and me. After a few more minutes, the scene in the next car seemed to reach its conclusion. The woman sat up and turned her head, and to my horror, it was Ju. We locked eyes, both frozen in shock. At seeing me as I was at learning she was the woman involved, we stared at each other until she turned her head away in panic and vomited on the dashboard. What the hell had just happened? This couldn't be real, it was some kind of sick hallucination. My eyes had to be playing tricks on me. Justine wouldn't do this to me, would she? It would sure explain her attitude as of late. God damn her. I wanted to be home, and I wanted to be there right now. My foot hit the gas just as I jammed the shifter into low gear and dumped the clutch. Luckily, the car had been in the right lane, so I tore off down the shoulder to the next exit. The Camaro flew by the accident that had been holding up the traffic, and the road was clear ahead. I swerved back onto the pavement just as I hit second gear. I forgot about going home altogether when I shifted to third. The car was doing about 70, and at 90, I pulled the shifter into fourth. The Camaro had hit its stride at 120, where the speedometer stopped keeping track. A couple of exits later, the highway patrol tried to chase me, but I floored the gas pedal and pulled away from them. I wasn't even thinking at this point. By now, I was out of the city and passing cars on the open road. My jaws were clenched so tight my teeth hurt, and my knuckles were white from my death grip on the steering wheel. Every once in a while, I would fly by another waiting patrol car, but the Camaro would leave them behind. It was apparent by now that I was in some pretty deep trouble, but it wouldn't be as bad as what I faced at home when I saw Justine again. The anger rose in my throat like bile. I had never in my entire life experienced the rage I was now consumed with. My instinct was to lash out, to destroy for the pain I was feeling. The adrenaline of the speed only served to fuel the fire inside me. One wrong move would put an end to it all. Should I? Could I? God, why? What had brought us to this? By this time, the tears in my eyes made it hard to see, and the rational part of me told me to pull over, or somebody was going to get hurt. My foot lifted off the pedal, and the car slowed, coasting to a stop at the side of the road. I sat behind the wheel and waited for the cops. Why had I let this get out of hand? I had my license and insurance ready when they finally showed up. They cuffed me and took me to jail. I was allowed to call someone to post my bail, so I called Jason, my attorney. I was booked for public endangerment and evading a police officer. When Jason picked me up, the officer at the desk handed me a ticket for speeding and reckless driving. On the way home, I told Jason he should be prepared to file for divorce. I explained the whole situation to him, and he advised me not to do anything stupid that would be hard to undo later. I promised him I'd keep my head and only talk to Justine. The anger that I had initially felt was left out on the highway. For the first time ever, I hoped that Justine would not be there. I had never had to deal with this type of feeling before. Even when we were fighting, I had never dreaded seeing her. I was treading on new ground, so I prepared myself for the worst. When I confronted her, she was sitting on the couch when I opened the door. She looked at me with fear in her eyes. It was plain to see that she had not slept the night before and had been crying. I walked past her to the kitchen without saying a word. It had been a long night in jail, and I needed some coffee. The pot was on, so I poured a cup and sat down at the table. Justine was standing in the doorway, waiting for me to say something. "Do you want some?" I said, nodding to my cup. "No, I've had enough." "So, Justine, how did we get to this place in our marriage?" "Scotty, I never meant to do anything like this. It just happened." "What part do you mean just happened?" "The end of our marriage? The affair?" "What part, Justine? Which part just happened?" I said, raising my voice. "All of it. I can't explain it to you. I don't know why myself. I don't buy that. Things have been going downhill for a long time now. You didn't wake up yesterday and decide to put an end to us, did you? Is it over now, Justine?" I asked, with as much control as I could manage. "Don't keep saying it's over, Scotty. I love you." "You have to give me a chance," she said, breaking down into tears. "A chance to do what, Justine? What's next?" "The only thing you haven't done is say it's my fault." "Is that next?" I couldn't look at her anymore right then. I went to the spare bedroom and closed the door. Sleep wouldn't come. My eyes were fixed on the ceiling. The white plaster was like a movie screen with a never-ending loop of Justine with that other man. I wanted it to stop, but no matter how hard I tried, it wouldn't go away. God, what a wonderful way to spend your 25th anniversary, alone, with a broken heart. After 2 hours of that endless mental torture, I got up and went to the kitchen for a drink. Justine was still sitting at the table, though she seemed to be lost in her own world. She didn't move. It was as if she had been cast in stone. I wanted to scream at her in that moment, but oddly, out of pity and love, I wanted to hold her and comfort her at the same time. Were we both losing our minds? I gathered Ju up into my arms and carried her to our bed. She clung to me like a frightened child, which is probably how she felt. I know I did. Laying Ju softly on the bed, I tried to pull away from her embrace, but her arms were wrapped tightly around my neck. I didn't have the strength to push her away right then, so I let her hold me, crying into my shoulder. This was the closest we had been in weeks, and I fought the urge to run. The emotions inside me were tearing me apart. Justine had been with another man and treated me like a stranger. I had stood by and let it happen. We should have faced this together, whatever it was. Why wouldn't she open up to me? Did she really not understand why things were falling apart? The only clear thought in my mind was that we couldn't continue like this. Whatever the outcome, anything would be better than the last few months. It was obvious to me that I still loved Ju, but I didn't like who she had become. Thinking about the future while she held on to me, I considered my options. Divorce, that would be the easiest route. Just get out while I still could, cut my losses, and leave. But that wasn't the answer, not yet. We had to get to the bottom of this. I owed that to her, and to myself. After 24 years together, I wasn't ready to forgive her, but we both deserved to understand what had gone wrong. I had never seen Ju in this condition before. She had always been strong and confident, but now she seemed fragile. What kind of man would I be to walk away while she was like this? I wasn't a believer in counseling, but at this point, what did I have to lose? A few weeks or months of therapy might help me find some clarity, some sense of direction. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep with Ju still holding onto me, clinging like her life depended on it. I knew what I had decided, but what about her? Would she agree to counseling? Last time I had mentioned it, she had rejected the idea completely. I was pretty sure this was the end if she refused. But surprisingly, Ju came to me with a similar plan. Scotty, I can't even begin to tell you how sorry I am. I don't know what possessed me to treat you so badly. I know I don't deserve you, but I need your help more than ever. Yes, but you don't even know what I'm going to ask, I said. Okay, go ahead and ask, but I think I know where this is going, she replied. I had a lot of time to think about it. We need to see someone to get to the bottom of this. Do you mean it? She asked, a flicker of hope in her voice. I don't deserve it, but will you do that with me, Scotty? Please don't get the wrong idea. I'm not saying everything will be okay, but I won't give up, not until we understand what went wrong. That's all I could ever wish for, she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. Ju, I need to know, who is he? How many times did you see him? I asked, my voice steady but firm. Please don't make me tell you about it, Scott. I just want to forget, she pleaded. If there's any chance for us, you need to be honest. If you start lying now, it's over. Scotty, please. You've already gone to jail because of me. I won't lie, but I don't want you to get into more trouble. This isn't an option, Justine. Tell me. It was my boss. He talked me into going to a hotel with him, and what happened there, you saw that. If you say anything to him, I'll lose my job, she said, her voice trembling. Screw the job, Ju. Do you really think I'd let you work there after this? I don't want you to contact him again, ever. I'll take care of it. There are millions of jobs out there unless you think your job is more important than I am. If that's the case, I'll be gone in an hour. No, Scotty, you're right. I wasn't even thinking. Of course. God, I wish none of this had happened, she whispered. Well, it did. And we can't go back, I said, walking away. I took a week off work. Jason, my lawyer, gave me the name of a marriage counselor he said was highly recommended. We had an appointment scheduled for Thursday. To Ju's dismay, I moved into the guest bedroom. I couldn't be around her right now, not with all the anger still simmering beneath the surface. Now, don't think I'm some macho guy who goes around fighting people. That's not me. I entered Jeff's office without making an appointment, though I didn't exactly storm in either. He wasn't shocked to see me, but the look on his face showed that he'd been anticipating this conversation for a while. I took a seat without waiting for an invitation. It wasn't his meeting, it was mine. Jeff, you probably know why I'm here, so let's skip the formalities, I said. He leaned back, trying to appear confident. Then you tell me why you've barged in here. Justine won't be working here anymore. He raised an eyebrow. That's fine by me. Saves me the trouble of firing her. If you cut me a check for her severance, you can be on your way. Severance? You must be out of your mind. Not the first time someone said that, I replied. But I think it would be in your best interest to pay up, say about $250,000. That should cover it. You're crazy, Jeff retorted, his voice rising. I won't pay you a dime. She came on to me. Going to the hotel was her idea, not mine. Besides, it's her word against mine. You can't prove anything. Oh, and don't forget about what I saw in your car that day. Think your wife would appreciate hearing about that? You leave her out of this, he barked. She's got nothing to do with it. Then write the check and we'll leave her in the dark. Trust me, you don't want this escalating. You really want Justine's family involved? What does her family have to do with this? Jeff snapped, his agitation showing. Oh, didn't you know? Justine's family is very Italian and very well connected, if you catch my drift. Jeff's face paled. You're full of... Okay, don't say I didn't warn you. You've got until next Friday. If I were you, I'd make sure your life insurance is up to date. Get out of here, he spat. As I left, I pulled out my phone and called Justine's brother, Mario. He picked up right away. Mario's Pizza. Mario, it's Scott. I need a little favor. You busy? Always busy, but for you, I've got time. I'll be there in 10. Mario wasn't actually connected, but you'd never guess. We went over the plan. Mario and Timmy, one of Justine's Irish cousins, would pay Jeff a little visit. Timmy had a reputation for being a little wild, with his crazy red hair adding to the effect. I had to admit, I was curious to see how Jeff would react to these two showing up at his door. Later, I dropped by to see how the visit went. Mario and Timmy were laughing over beers. Scott, you should have seen his face when we told him we were collecting donations for the Italian American Relief Society, Mario chuckled. He wrote me a check for $500. You're kidding me, I said, laughing. Nope, it's right here, Timmy added, pulling out the check with a grin. Ju was still keeping her distance, clearly regretful, but the pain between us was still raw. We were civil, but the trust was fractured. We needed help, and I had scheduled an appointment with a marriage counselor. The night before our session, Ju and I worked quietly together on a questionnaire the counselor had given us. After a while, she pushed some papers toward me and whispered, "Thank you, Scott." For what? For everything, she said softly before heading to bed. I was thankful she didn't push for anything more. If she had tried to seduce me right then, I might have given in. But we both knew it wasn't the time for that. We needed to rebuild trust, not paper over the cracks. The next day, we met the counselor, Ed, a big, burly man with white hair and a beard that made him look like a plus-size Santa Claus. I hoped I wouldn't have to sit on Ed's lap. Ju was nervous, but Ed quickly put her at ease. He greeted us and laid out his expectations, honesty was crucial. Don't try to protect each other's feelings. We need to get to the root issues, so the brutal truth must come out. Also, please avoid interrupting each other. You'll have your chance to speak, but for now, just listen. And don't expect quick fixes, this will take time. Be patient. Ed turned to Justine. So, Justine, what do you want from our meeting? I want my life back. I want Scott to love me again, she said, struggling to hold back tears. Fair enough. Scott, how about you? I want to understand why Justine has changed so much over the last 6 months. She's not the same person I've known for most of my life. That's a realistic expectation, Ed said. But how do you envision this resolving at the end of our sessions? It depends on how things unfold. I'm not going to pretend I know what's going to happen, I admitted. Ed nodded. I've studied both your profiles, but I want to hear from you. Are you committed to working through these problems, or are you here to resolve your own fears and doubts? Do you want to fix your marriage? Are you saying I'm not here for the right reasons? I asked, feeling defensive. No, not at all, Ed said. From what I've gathered, Justine wants to repair the marriage. What I'm getting from you is that you want to understand why it broke down, but I'm not seeing much about whether you want to fix things afterward. It felt like a slap in the face. Justine spoke for most of the session, sharing her stress at work and home, and mentioning her lack of libido and insomnia. Ed took notes, and I felt like a spectator in a reality show. At the end of the session, Ed handed Justine a list of tests he wanted her to get done, suggesting a doctor. I left the meeting feeling disheartened. Ed's focus on my part angered me. This wasn't my fault. I hadn't broken my vows. I was there to support Justine, who needed help. Justine left Ed's office with hope, while I left with confusion. I decided to hit the bar. After a beer or two, and reflecting on my night in jail earlier that week, I needed solitude. I drove the Camaro towards the mountains on the scenic road, the winding curves providing a brief escape from my thoughts. The serene drive helped me leave my troubles behind, at least for the moment. When I got home, Justine was waiting for me. Scott, can we talk? She asked. What now? I thought. Sure, I'm going to get a Coke. Would you like something? No, thank you, she replied, waiting for me to return. I sat down, bracing myself for what was to come. Scott, I've been thinking about the session with Ed, Justine said, her tears streaking her mascara. I'm scared. He asked you something today that I never considered. Please, Scott, I need the truth. Are you going to leave me? I struggled to answer. Justine, I can't even begin to answer that right now. A lot has happened this week, and over the last 6 months. Some things I'll get past, others might never go away. I haven't had much time to process it all yet. I love you, she said softly. It might not have seemed like it lately, but please believe me, it's true. I'd like to tell you that I'll never hurt you again, but I can't, Justine said. It's not that I want to do these things to you, they just happen. I know you don't understand what's going on, and honestly, I don't either. She took my hands in hers, pausing to take a deep breath before continuing. I hate myself for hurting you. I would do anything to take it all back. There are no words to express how sorry I am for Jeff, for the way I've been treating you, for everything. Every day, I tell myself that it won't happen again. I was at a loss for words, my mouth dry. I resisted the urge to hold her, fearing it might send the wrong message. Justine knelt before me, pressing my hands to her cheek. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Scott, no matter what you decide, I want you to be happy. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me. I can't, after how I've acted. I want more than anything to grow old by your side, but only if that's what you want. If you decide you need to leave to find happiness, I'll understand. She left the room, leaving me behind, feeling as though she'd resorted to psychological tactics. It was working. I was moved almost to tears by her words. I knew she was sincere. After living with someone as long as we had, you come to know the plain, honest truth. I didn't have enough on my mind already. My brain was in overload. I wanted to work the next week, but for all I accomplished, I might as well have stayed home. Jeff and I met with Ed again on Thursday. He had Justine's test results back from the doctor. Ed said, "After our meeting last week, I had a hunch about what we were looking at, and the test results confirm it. Justine has a condition known as bipolar disorder, also known as manic depression. The good news is that it is very treatable with medication and therapy. Justine will need to see a psychiatrist for a while to work on her inner struggles. The medication will take some time to take effect, maybe a week or up to a month. Do you have any questions?" We both asked a lot of questions. Justine's symptoms seemed to fit her condition perfectly, everything aligned like pieces in a puzzle, except for one thing. I couldn't accept that the issues I'd been dealing with over the past 6 months could be resolved with a pill. Ed sensed my defensiveness. "Scott, you seem to be having a hard time accepting this." "Well, yeah, it's not clear. I see things in black and white. This seems to let Justine off the hook for everything. You haven't had to live with her mood swings, the attacks on me, and the affair." Justine cut me off. "Scott, it wasn't an affair, it was one time." I interrupted, "Yeah, one time. How many times would it have been if I hadn't caught you?" Ed broke in, "That's enough. We're not here to argue. Remember the rules. Scott, I want to talk to you alone next session. Justine will talk to her psychiatrist next week. I've set up an appointment for her." Things were pretty quiet at home that night. After our spat, Justine and I ate dinner in silence. She tried to act normally, but I wasn't ready to let things go. I was supposed to take this explanation and forget her behavior? That was the rub. At 10 the next morning, guess who showed up at my office? Go ahead, take a guess. Jeff. I figured I'd never see that slimeball again, and I'd forgotten all about the deadline I'd given him. I quickly got back into the game. "So, what brings you here today? Did you come to screw my secretary?" I said, ignoring my sarcasm. "I'll get right to the point. I've thought it over, and you were right about one thing. It's in my best interest to settle things with you. I'm here to make an offer." "Okay, so make it." "I'm busy. 200,000 in a signed waiver." I said 250, and what is this waiver? "Okay, 250, but I need the waiver to protect myself from any further actions." "Deal, when I see the money, we have a deal." He produced the envelope with the check inside. I guess he knew I wasn't backing down. The lower offer was a bluff, and I called it. I had my secretary witness my signature on the waiver Jeff brought with him. I chuckled to myself after Jeff left. I never expected him to pay up. Justine was surprised when I handed her the check. She hadn't known anything about my dealings with Jeff. The reality of the situation sunk in, and we had nothing to celebrate. It should have been a happy moment, but we both knew why we had the money. Justine looked embarrassed, holding the check. It silently conveyed, "This is the reward for cheating on your husband." The next week, Ed cornered me. He knew where I was coming from and tried to get me to open up. "Scott, you have some choices to make regarding your marriage. I think you can see that this is up to you. I don't have a magic pill for you to take. The only thing I can do is help you with information. Ultimately, you will have to choose the outcome. Ed, I'm a banker. I know the formulas, 2 + 2 is equal to 4. It's simple. Everything adds up, and it all balances in the end. This medical thing makes no sense to me." Ed sat back in his chair, stroking his beard in thought. After a minute, he finally spoke. "Okay, the medical part one thing I can explain in terms that may make sense to you. The other things you're dealing with may take more time, but we'll try. First of all, Scott, I want you to imagine there are 2 different accounts that Justine uses for her emotions. Are you with me so far? I nodded. Good. In these accounts, there should be equal amounts of money. Account 1 is the happy account, and account 2 is the sad account. When both accounts are even, Justine is balanced, and all is well. When either account is less than the other, Justine is manic or depressed, respectively. Okay, Ed, so the medication manages her accounts for her? Exactly. It keeps her balanced. It's more complex than that, but you get the picture. We're dealing with two different behavior patterns caused by the same chemical imbalance. So she doesn't really know what's happening? It's not her fault? Not really. She isn't in control. She has no idea which mood will be in charge at any given time. What causes the imbalance, that's for the psychiatrist to figure out. There are many things that can trigger it. When he gets to the root of the problem, he'll help her deal with it. Will she be the same again? I asked. Well, you have to define what you mean by the same. Will she be well? I think so. The same as before? No, I don't think either of you will be the same. Your relationship has been traumatized, and there will be scars for a long time to come. I'm not saying they won't heal, but it won't happen overnight. I guess that's what I fear the most. I want what we had, not something new and unknown. Scott, you better get used to that idea. Whatever you choose, you'll be treading on new territory. If you choose divorce, you'll be starting a new life on your own. Reconciliation will be much the same, you'll be rebuilding your life, but Justine will be helping you. Ed, I just don't know how to forget the hurt. You may never be able to forget it completely, but the memories will fade. Scott, as a banker, do you lose all faith in a mutual fund when it drops a point, or do you watch it closely and protect your investments? You have a huge investment in Justine. Don't make any snap judgments. I'll be out of town next week and would like to see both of you in 2 weeks. Try to rationalize all of your problems. I think you can eliminate a lot of what's on your mind. It was time to get away. I needed time alone to sort out my feelings. It was too hard to think with Justine around me. I packed a few things into the Camaro and said goodbye to Justine. As I got into the car, I could see the pain in her face. Would this be the last time we parted as husband and wife? I was off to Reno, not for a divorce, but for the car show I had wanted to attend for years. Hot August nights brings car enthusiasts from all over the country. Over 5,000 antique and muscle cars would be there, and my Camaro would be one of them. The city was covered with hot rods. I should have been in heaven, but I felt a pang of sadness because most of the spectators were couples, guys cruising with their best girls and couples holding hands, reminiscing about their younger days. I was suddenly sad that I had no one to share the experience with. Justine would have loved this. Saturday night, everyone in the city was partying except me. I was sitting alone in my room, feeling sorry for myself. I was about to call Justine, partly because I promised I would and mostly because I missed her. I don't know why, but I changed my mind. In an instant of self-pity, I left my room and went to the hotel bar. Have you ever wanted to be by yourself but not alone? It was the way I felt that night. I was becoming a basket case. My world was crumbling, and I couldn't seem to hold it together. I'd been telling myself for weeks, Scott, be strong. You can do this. It's just a phase. But I wasn't so sure anymore. I was drinking whiskey as fast as the bartender could serve it, feeling pathetic, a middle-aged man sitting alone at a bar while everyone else was having a good time. A few minutes later, I found that not everyone was enjoying themselves. Well, actually, she found me. I suppose that two people in the same mood among all this partying were bound to collide. She was every bit as drunk as I was, which was next to unconscious. We mostly stared at each other for the better part of an hour. So, what's your story? She slurred. I really don't want to talk about it. How about you? Would you rather drink or talk? Talk. Okay, shut up and order another round, and I'll talk. Okay, I'm Scott. I said with no real conviction. Jennifer, she said, holding out her hand. I shook it lightly. You don't seem to be here for the party. Do you live around here? Yeah, for the next couple of days anyway. So I've been sitting next to you, trying to get you to pick me up for an hour. Are you gay? The whiskey burned my nostrils as I had been drinking when she asked if I was gay. I almost choked. What? Hell no, I'm not gay. I just wasn't looking for company right now. Oh, problems with your wife? Something like that. But like I said before, I really don't want to talk about it. Well, it looks like we're in the same boat. My husband has ignored me all goddamn day. First it was golf, and now he's talking about cars with some guy he doesn't even know. Well, screw him. He brought me here to have a good time. That's just what I intend to do, with or without him. Jennifer was about 10 years younger than I was. She was attractive and seemed very available. Without another word, she grabbed my arm and pulled me along. I guess I was drunk enough to just follow her. It didn't even register in my mind what was happening until we were in the elevator. She was taking me to her room. Jennifer was all over me as we ascended to the 6th floor. I could hardly walk as she dragged me by the hand, rushing to her room. We must have been in the hallway for 5 minutes before the card lock on the door cooperated enough to let us in. This was by far too crazy for me, even in my drunken stupor. Jennifer only made it as far as the bed before she passed out. I probably couldn't explain why I stayed. There was something inside telling me not to leave her alone. So, I took up residence in the chair by the window. As the hours rolled by, I sobered up. Jennifer was still sprawled on the bed, sleeping motionlessly. It must have been a little after when the door opened and quietly shut. The man froze when he saw me, looking dumbfounded and silent. I held a finger to my lips, signaling for him to remain quiet. I needed to talk to this guy. He had to know how close he had come to disaster. I motioned him out into the hallway, still keeping my finger to my lips. I didn't want to risk waking Jennifer. Once in the hall, I said, just don't ask. We need to talk, and we need somewhere more private than this. What's this all about? He asked. Just follow me, and I'll explain. We proceeded to the 4th floor, where my room was. I told him my name and found out his was Brian. Once we were seated at the table in my room, I planned to save Brian some heartache. Look, Brian, you were about a millimeter away from losing your wife tonight. Unless you're one of those guys with an open marriage. Oh hell no, he responded. That's what I figured. I want you to listen to me, just listen. Don't talk. Jennifer's passed out. She's dead drunk. You left her alone tonight. I'm not going to tell you how to run your life, but don't you think she deserves better from you? If she had picked up any other stranger, you might have walked into something quite different than me sitting here waiting for you. She told me you pretty much abandoned her today. I don't want to preach to you, but she could have been with someone who might have taken advantage of her condition. How would you have felt if she was lying there naked with another man when you walked in? You don't have to answer, I already know how it feels. I don't know why she chose to hit on me, but consider yourself fortunate that she did. I saw a lot of Justine's behavior reflected in what happened tonight as I talked to you. Jennifer was drunk and acting irrationally. If only someone had been there to help Justine instead of that jerk Jeff. Brian sat still as I continued. Brian, if you want to throw away your marriage, that's up to you. I was with a very sad and very beautiful woman tonight who's begging for a little attention. It's up to you how this ends. If I were you, I'd consider it a warning shot. You won't be so lucky next time. Scott, I never even thought, you're right. I should have seen it coming. I've been a pig. I promised to pay attention to her while we were here. I guess I have a lot of work ahead of me now to make things right. Brian, we don't know each other, but I know what I'm talking about. You can fix your marriage fairly easily if you do it now. The longer you wait, the harder it will be. You're right. Are you going to be here later? I'd like for Jennifer to meet you when she sobers up. I appreciate the offer, but I have somewhere else I need to be. Our talk made me realize that, and I'm going to get on the road as soon as I pack. Scott, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You protected Jennifer and me. I'll never forget this. She means the world to me. I won't let her down again. Brian left to return to his room. I got the feeling he wasn't entirely sincere. I doubted he would ever change. He listened to what I said but was already looking for another friend to hang out with. He should be spending time with his wife, but he wanted to invite me to spend time with them. I saw this as a bad sign. I also saw the difference between Jennifer and Justine. Jennifer had cheating on her mind before she got drunk, while Justine was already impaired when it happened. Some people can't see the forest for the trees, but I wasn't going to be one of them. What I had wasn't perfect, but it was a whole lot better than what those two looked forward to. I can't say for sure, as I'm no expert in relationships, but Brian wouldn't change, and Jennifer would eventually cheat on him. It was just after 6 o'clock when I wheeled the Camaro onto the freeway. It would be an 8-hour drive to get home. I wanted to be there more than anywhere in the world. Reno had given me the kick in the bum I needed. I was glad I'd gone there, but just as happy to see it in my rearview mirror as I drove. My head was full of what Ed had said to me. My life had changed, and it was up to me where the changes led. I thought about where I'd been and where I was going. I decided it was time for something different. I wasn't the same old Scott, and there was no need to pretend to be him. The image I had of my wife was now tainted. It was time for a new Justine as well. I called Justine a little after 9. I had a favor to ask her and no idea how she would react. She surprised me when she eagerly agreed. She was very excited that I was coming home. Honestly, I was too. When I pulled into the garage, Justine ran out to meet me, and she was sporting the favor I had asked for. Her short brunette hair looked gorgeous on her. It was the first step on a long road ahead for us, but it was a step in the right direction. Justine wrapped her arms around me and gave me a warm kiss. It felt so good to be home again, though I wasn't just talking about our house. We walked into the house, and Justine had her arm around my waist. She looked up and said, "I've missed you so much. What do you think? Is it too short?" She brushed the bangs from her eyes. "It's perfect. I love the way you look. You must be starved. Would you like a sandwich?" she asked as I sat at the kitchen table. "That would be great. I haven't eaten for a while. Is turkey okay?" "Yeah, that's fine. I have some things to ask you." I had a lot of time to think about us on the drive home. "I'm listening." "I've decided to quit the bee." "Okay. Would you like some soup with your sandwich?" "Did you hear me?" "Yes, you're going to quit your job. Is vegetable all right, or do you want chicken noodle?" "I would have thought you might have more to say." "My job's been pretty important to us, Scotty. Please, I realize what you've meant to me. If you want to do this, I'll support you. You've stood by me most of my life. It's time for me to be there for you." "Okay, now that it's settled, vegetable would be good." That was as surreal of a conversation as I'd ever had. I expected a fight, and I got soup. That wasn't my only surprise of the day either. Later that night, while I was lying in bed, Justine came out of the bathroom in a new look. She just smiled and made a light-hearted comment about her appearance. I had been tired, having not slept for close to 2 days, but as exhausted as I was, we found our way back to intimacy. It had been a long time for both of us, but we made up for it. We had taken another giant step toward our renewed relationship. Justine's mood had changed dramatically in the last week, and I had renewed hope that we could make it. I knew we could. We would be different people. This wasn't only about a new job and a new hairdo. My plan was to restore our marriage to something we could be proud of, much like I had done with the Camaro. With Justine's help, we could make our relationship better than new. When we visited Ed on Thursday, he was genuinely surprised by the progress we'd made in the last week. The session was scheduled to start a dialogue between Justine and me, but as we told Ed, we were already a lot further along than that. I had moved back into our bedroom, and we were communicating better. Justine had not shown any of her previous issues since starting medication. We talked a little about my trip to Reno and the turning point in my attitude. This was the first time Justine had heard about Jennifer. "Yeah, she picked me up in the bar," I said. Justine looked over, and Ed asked, "Did you ever consider what might have happened?" "Absolutely." I was very intoxicated when we got to the elevator. I realized what was happening. This was all new to me. I don't usually get picked up by strangers. I was a little slow on the uptake, but by the time we got to her room, my brain got back into the game. I could have easily slept with her, well, maybe not in the condition we were in, but if the situation had been right and she hadn't passed out, it could have happened. Justine looked at the floor and asked, "Why didn't you?" I wouldn't have blamed you. Probably a lot of reasons, but the main one was you. I remember the pain I felt when I saw you. I was sober enough to know it was wrong and that I had commitments to you, wedding vows, a lifetime together, our son, and the promise to stand by you while you worked through your problems. I still loved you too much to hurt you. Justine was crying now, and I said, "You've got to quit beating yourself up over this. I forgive you. If you can't let it go, it will never be over." Ed smiled. "I love my job when others do all the work. Scott, I'd say you've come around now. I think you've concluded that life isn't as simple as yes or no. There are a lot of ifs and maybes. We can't always make decisions based on what we see. There are circumstances to factor in. Ed, you've taught an old dog a few things. Justine and I will be making some big changes, not only in our relationship but in our lifestyle as well. We've talked about how we were secluded in a way we didn't even realize. There is so much more out there to experience, and we want to enjoy our time together." "Justine, how do you feel about all of this?" asked Ed. "I couldn't be happier. Scott has been so wonderful. I've put him through hell, and he still loves me. I'm actually looking forward to new adventures with him." "How are you doing with your therapy?" "Well, I've only had a couple of sessions, but I'm opening up a little more each time. The doctor feels that we are making progress." "How have you been feeling overall?" "I can honestly say I haven't felt this good in years." "Oh, by the way, I like your new hairstyle," I said to a now blushing Justine. Ed had scheduled us for a checkup in a few months. We were doing well, and he felt no need to continue our weekly meetings. We spent the rest of the day doing the things we did when we were dating. We ate lunch at a burger joint downtown, and the fries were so greasy they were hard to hold. It was great. We saw an afternoon movie. Neither of us could remember the last time we'd even been in a theater. The back seat of a car is no place for old folks, but it was fun and brought back a lot of memories. When my early retirement came through, we sold our house in the suburbs. I thought Justine would have a hard time with it, but she never even looked back. We moved to a small town outside of the city. Justine found a great house on a few acres, and I loved it. I started construction on the shop right away. Yep, we started our own restoration business. With a great deal of work, Bobby's help, and Jeff's money, we build and restore hot rods. Justine manages the office, and I try to stay out of Bobby's way. Well, as the boss, isn't that what they do? The shop is doing very well. It allows Justine and me to travel a lot. We look at cars all over the country for new ideas. Justine still sees her psychiatrist. There was a combination of unrelated events that contributed to her meltdown. She had been abused at an early age by a relative, and there were issues about a failed relationship in high school. Justine turning 40 a few years ago compounded these, and when our son moved across the country, Justine's mind revolted. There's more to it and probably more to come, but we accept it and know what to look for. If anyone cares, I went to court for my road rage. I paid a stiff fine and had my driving privileges revoked for 6 months. The judge must have been in a bad mood, but it could have been worse. You should have been there to see Justine trying to learn how to drive the stick shift in the Camaro. It was hilarious. She caught on pretty quick. I don't think I'll ever get to drive that car again. Justine tells me it's hers now, and I should build my own. I might get it done before I get my license back. I have my eye on a sharp 71 Barracuda. Was I too easy on Justine? Probably. Do I regret it? No, not one bit. She was worth the risk. I learned a lot in the last year. It wasn't all good either. There were times I wanted to give up and let it all dissolve. But today, I'm thankful that I didn't. Each day with Justine is more precious to me than gold. She isn't only my wife, she is my lover, my best friend, and my world. Anyway, I found if I would have done anything to hurt her, I probably would be sleeping with the fishes. Timmy would have had me whacked. Mario may not be connected, but Tim, that's a different story altogether. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.